So, it is time to do another what if blank died instead of another character, or what if blank survived instead of another character. This time we're going to talk about Joseph's family, the considered waifu Lisa Lisa, and the often forgotten about George II. What happens if George II survived in Lisa's spot? So, yeah, today we're going to talk about the possibility of Joseph's dad being around instead of his mom. So, yeah, let's start this video. But before we do this, I have to thank a little special shout out for requesting this. This was by Bully Maguri. If I pronounced that last part wrong, I am terribly sorry. But yeah, that was done by them, and I'm going to do this video because of their request. So thank you to them for producing this video. Well, now it is time to go to the actual changes of the video. So we need a way for Lisa to die because George II was never taught Hamon while Lisa was taught Hamon. We could say the roles are switched, or we could say Lisa still is taught Hamon while George II isn't. Maybe Lisa can instead go and take the spot, and that being she goes and fights probably a far stronger vampire zombie, or maybe she's got a similar death to how Caesar's father died, and that he died to the Pillarmen, who were woken a little bit early. So maybe something like that. She dies to the Pillarmen, and George II finds out about her death. Now, I don't think he'd be banished from the family, in my honest opinion, so yeah. Joseph gets to have a dad, and it's more than likely that he would probably now learn Hamon because, well, his wife's dead, and the way she died, Speedwagon would probably tell her, and he'd probably go to Straightso for help. Now, this would probably mean Straightso may never turn to a vampire, which if that's the case, then that's a good thing. So maybe he stays human. Speedwagon and George II and Joseph could go with Straightso, and they could all be taught Hamon together. And if Straightso still decides to turn evil, I still think Joseph would beat him in a fight. So, yeah, it would be a far better Joseph when it comes to Hamon, and those guys would be planning to stop the Pillarmen. So, another thing would be about the Nazis. Now, they're gonna need to find a way to get, like, Speedwagon for Santana, so how are they gonna do it? Let's just say around this time, instead, Speedwagon is not involved. They tell Speedwagon to flood, and instead Nazis are waiting and just capture Speedwagon, which is pretty easy. Like, that's the most easy case scenario that can come out of it. So George and Joseph are distracted with Straightso. They kill him. He tells them about the Pillarmen, and they go and meet Stroheim and Santana. Now, I don't see George really being involved with this fight, and instead probably still being Joseph. George II would probably just get Speedwagon out of there, and Joseph would be holding off not Straightso, but Santana. Or maybe the roles are just swapped because George II doesn't want his son to get killed. And then they would probably hear about the rest of the Pillarmen by Stroheim, where Stroheim dies, and then we would get to meet Caesar in Italy. Now, George would probably tell Joseph about Jonathan in this timeline, meaning that Joseph does know about his family, meaning Caesar doesn't have to be such a jerk to him. So yeah, in this timeline, Caesar's not as big as a douchebag. Well, I mean, he probably still is cocky, but I don't think he would be, like, a jerk. He'll just be cocky and kind of still be the same, I guess. He'd be a lot more understanding that Joseph knows about his family past, but he'd probably think Joseph is too much of a goofball. Caesar's still a playboy, and Joseph is probably still angry about him. And George II would take them to where Lisa originally trained them. Since Lisa's dead, now George II's got to be the one to train them. Now, he's not that good at Hamon, and Joseph and him probably have the same amount of experience. Caesar's probably got more experience, or as much experience. So now these three are going to have to go in together. Now, some other things could be, like, other Hamon trainers. Uh, Maybe the Speedwagon Foundation could have more Hamon users, and that could help them better. Those two big Nappa imposters that Lisa had, those guys could honestly still come into the story, but I don't really think they would. I still think the Pillarman encounter could go the same, but a 3-on-3 instead. And George II probably would help Joseph. Maybe Caesar would also. They may actually be able to kill Wamu, but I think Wamu would be able to escape. I think ACDC and Wamu and Cars are still able to get Joseph, and Joseph is still forced to get engaged by Cars, Wamu, and ACDC. But Joseph hates engagement as seen with Tomoko, so he obviously doesn't like this and still wants to get those rings back. So they decide to try another Hamon a bit longer, and everything would kind of go the same at that point. I still think Joseph can kill ACDC, and Susie could probably still be involved with the story, I guess. The only real change is that really Tomoko, not Tomoko, but the only real change here is that we don't get that bath scene, meaning we don't get Joseph screaming, "Nice!" So, that's a sad little miss out, cause, unless you want to make Joseph gay. But he knows George II's his dad. Please don't. It's disgusting. Either way, Caesar, George II, and Joseph would probably be able to resolve that fight. So, yeah. And when it comes to that whole thing with Cars, maybe they can kill him there, but I think Cars would still escape. As for Wamu, I instead think they would all go in as a group, meaning that Caesar does not die. So, yay, Bubble Boy's still alive. Or, aw, if you love the fact that Caesar's dead because, Giga Chad, or some crap. That death sucked, but either way, now Cars has got a 3-on-1. Cars may be able to kill George II or Caesar. I don't really think he would. Caesar's kind of a game changer at that point because of his range, but I still think everything could go the same. Joseph would still die, and everything can just go the same at that point. The only real changes is that Lisa's dead earlier, George II's still alive, and not only George II, but now Caesar's still alive. So, a lot of changes there. So now we can go off to part 3, where stands exist. Now, I think George, Joseph, and Caesar would continue Hamon training. And I think Caesar would probably have a family of his own because it seems very likely that they would kind of do that. I feel like Araki would have the Zappellis live a similar life to how the Joestars were, and that being they would produce more. I honestly think Caesar making it to part 3 would be better, in my opinion. And I think that's going to be the route I would go with. So, Caesar has children, and then they have kids, so they can be around Jotaro or Kakuen's age. We're gonna call them Julius and Rosanna. Why? Rosanna is a good name, and she'll be a female, and Julius because Julius Caesar. Wordplay, I know, right? Either way, Julius is a grandson, obviously, and George II, Joseph, and Caesar would continue Hamon training. The grandkids would also probably know some Hamon, which would make them more useful. Abdul would probably also know Hamon in advance too, if that's the case, so you have 6 Hamon users. Jotaro still joins the group, Kakuen can still join, and I still think Polnareff would join, with the Zappellis probably taking Abdul's spot. As for other fights to change, uh, it depends what stand abilities they have. For Rose, I see her with a water ability, and Julius I see with a electric ability, because that would be pretty sick. So they can make some good combos out of it. I see Julius probably taking Jotaro's Jobro figure role instead of Kakuen or Polnareff. Rose could probably become Kakuen's best friend during the story, and they could probably have a similar relationship to Trish and Narancia from Part 5, or someone like that. So yeah, they could be a nice little friendship there. Other changes to come out of this would include some of the big fights could actually be trimmed down shorter. Abdul's fake out death might not happen if George II is really more experienced with Hamon. Same with the others, because Hamon can actually heal people, so maybe if they check Abdul's pulse, they could figure out, yeah, he's still alive, let's just heal him back up. So Abdul's absence might not happen. Uh, Other small changes could be that I could also see some big fights between George II and Jotaro. Maybe George II has more of a Jonathan personality and not liking Jotaro's disrespectful personality. So I could see them probably yelling at each other a lot. Uh, as for when we get to like the final fight, with some other changes beforehand, I think Kakyoin would still get injured, and I think Rosanna would stay behind with them. Kind of a little nice little moment for them to stay together. Yeah, you can tell what the long term is gonna be. But the final fight with Dio happened, and Vanilla Ice and Dio, who would go with who? In my opinion, Caesar and George would probably go in with Vanilla Ice, and the Zappelli grandkids would be with younger Darby. Younger Darby has no changes, unless Julius takes like or Rose takes like Kakiwan's spot, or they go in after them or and before Jotaro. Unless you want to do that, I don't see much changing. Vanilla Ice, Abdal would probably still die, and the rest of the fight would probably play out the same, unless hormone wise, because Georgia second and Caesar are both experienced with hormone, and maybe Polnareff could have learned hormone along the way alongside the Crusaders, meaning Ice is dealt with before Iggy could actually die, so Iggy's still alive. Now, when it comes to the split up, I think because of this, George II would try to challenge Dio instead. Dio would probably just troll with him instead. I don't know. I got troll. I was pronouncing that wrong. Uh, Iggy and Polnareff would stay hidden, and the plan would be once Dio would reveal himself, for them to do a 3-on-1 surprise attack. But Dio trolling around with his time stop, that's not gonna happen. Kakuin and the others still bust in to save the day, only for Dio to do time stop. Now, I think the split up would be more different. Now the OG 6 Crusaders are down to 5 in the original. Like in the original, they only have 4, now they have 5 with Iggy, and now plus an extra 4, which would lead to 9. So I think there would be 3 ups of 3. Now, if you're wondering how it would work, I would have Polnareff and Jotaro still be together, but instead I would have Iggy go with them. Julius, Rosanna, and Caesar would go together. No, wait. Instead, I think it would be George II, Joseph, and Caesar, and Kakuin would go with the Zappelli grandkids. That's probably how I would write it there. You could change it around if you want, but I think that's how it would go. And when Dio is going to be all cocky about his time stop, instead it's Caesar who takes the blow. It could be George or Joseph, but I think Caesar would make the most sense. And personally, I think if Caesar were to die, it would be in part 3. And if he were to die in part 3, in my honest opinion, I think Kakuin would be the one to have to live. So yeah. The rest of the fight would go the same. The Zappelli grandkids would probably take a similar role to Polnareff. I think Iggy would end up dying against Dio, though. So, unfortunately, Iggy's gonna have to die. He's gonna have to take the L. George II would also probably be able to kill Dio unless time stop's involved. And Dio would get a far more bigger boost up because he has 2 Joestar's blood in him and not just 1. So, yeah, I think George II being there would just give Dio an extra boost up in strength. So, he's just too overpowered at that point. But the rest of the thing would kind of go the same with Jotaro just getting time stop, winning at the end, and I think Joseph and George II could both come back to life, or George II could just stay dead. Hard to say there. But either way, that's kind of the end, with the survivors in this timeline being Joseph, Jotaro, and Polnareff like in the same, but Kakuin and Caesar's grandchildren, Rosanna and Julius, would also survive too. Now, if you're wondering how 4 changes, I mean, it would kind of go the same like in my whole horse video, and that being that I feel like not much would change. Joseph would have hormones, so that changes a lot. George II also, probably still training with Hamon and Caesar too, but I don't really think Caesar would be in Morio, and most likely is in Italy. So there are some changes there. Rose and Kakuin would probably travel together and would start a family and become a couple. And Julius would probably just be in Italy with Polnareff and his grandfather Caesar. Uh, as for some changes here, when it comes to Morio, Hamon Joseph and having a Hamon not Julius, but George II, you honestly have a lot more manpower. Plus, you have Kakuin now, who has long range with his Hierophant. You honestly have some powerhouses of the group, in my honest opinion. So, like, legitimately, Hierophant's long range could probably prevent Kira from escaping. If Joseph and George II can use Hermit Purple enough to a point they can maybe track down Kira, those are some possibilities that can actually come out of it. I don't think it would work, though. I think Hierophant would work better when it comes to tracking down Kira. They could probably be involved with the Bite to Dust fight. But some fights that would change would be the first round with Kira, as that would be the big fight to change because of Hamon. Now, Hamon at that point is basically power to the sun. What is the sun controlled of? Fire. How does sheer heart attack work? It goes for the nearest seeking heat. So in other words, Joseph and George II might die to Kira because of sheer heart attack. Now, if we're going as far as say it's similar to Jotaro where they take an explosion but they don't die, then I don't really see much changing. Kira would probably maybe kill one of them if he does find one as a threat, but I don't think much would change there. Part 4, with Kakuin being around, would just turn it to the What If Whole Horse join the Crusaders, but remove Avdol and Whole Horse from Part 4, and that's kind of what the part would be like. Kakuin won't change too much, but what he does change is a lot of changes. Part 5 would probably have Julius and Polnareff working together. Caesar, if he's still alive, can be there. Iggy, if he's still alive, would also be there. So yeah, what would Julius's role be? I think around the time skip, Caesar would make his own sister location, insert FNAF joke here, for the Speedwagon Foundation in Italy called Zappelli Incorporated, which could be something similar to the Speedwagon Foundation, but for Italy. Julius would be like their version of Jotaro, but would later own it because Caesar's dead. Uh, him being in there means that he may actually talk Polnareff out of rushing into battle, or Polnareff still injured, but instead, he's the one who's given him the mechanical limbs. I don't know how Polnareff got mechanical limbs in the original. Do you have any connection with the Speedwagon Foundation? Because if that's the case, then Jotaro should have just came and saved the day, like realistically speaking. But yeah, that would probably just be kind of how it goes. Part 5 mostly goes the same, unless someone else just takes the role, like Koichi doesn't go to Italy, but instead Kakuin or George II or Joseph, if one of them are alive. Maybe Rose goes. Those are some ideas, some food for thought. But everything else kind of just goes the same for part 5. I just don't think they'd stay around for long enough. Like, I mean, maybe, like, some of those characters would definitely, but, like, everyone else, probably not. Maybe, I don't know, Joseph and George II would probably, maybe Kakuin would stay around. If they do, it'd just probably make the part easier. Honestly, George II would probably die in either part 3, 4, or 5. I don't really see him living long enough to make it to part 6. Caesar being there would probably just play a similar role to Polnareff. He'd probably either be the one in Coco Jumbo or he'd actually stay dead. And part 5 would probably just kind of end there. I don't really see too many changes. Like, unless you got, like, a big deal fighter there, I don't see there being any changes, in my honest opinion. So part 5 goes the same, somewhat. Now, the final part to change would be Stone Ocean, aka part 6. What changes because of this? Well, George II and Joseph, if we're being real... Okay, George II, we're going to probably remove at this point. He's probably either dead against Dio in part 3, he either dies to sheer attack against Kira in part 4, those are the most likely fates, or he dies in part 5 because Diavolo. But, like, I don't really see him being in part 6 at the end of the day, even if he's still alive. Joseph would actually. Hormone training means he would probably go back in. Now, kind of like I said with the Kakuin What If, like the Whole Horse What If, Kakuin could probably still have a son. Tenma could still be invented, I guess. Josuke could still be there. But instead, maybe Joseph can go, either in the spot of Josuke or alongside of Tenma and Josuke. So, yeah. Maybe Okuyasu would actually go because he's still alive. So at that point, that's just kind of making the port a little more easier. So yeah, you kind of got more characters like that on the team. You have Joseph now on the group who, I don't know, what would Joseph's personality be like had he keep hormone training? That's kind of a question I want to know now. Would he be how he was in part 2, or would he have his more part 3 or 4 self? Or would he have his more part 3 self? I don't know. I think he'd have more of a part 2 kind of character. As for how he'd probably look like his part 3 self if he was in part 6. Maybe he'd look like he's in his 50s instead, maybe 40s. Had, like, he'd go extreme hormone training, like Lisa. I don't really know. I think he would. And maybe he can look a lot younger. I don't know. A younger Joseph in part 6 would be fun. It would be interesting to see his interactions with the kind of the Stone Ocean group and to the other characters. Maybe Josuke and Joseph can work together. Joseph probably is going to still survive, so maybe that could give the Stone Ocean group an actual happy ending, because, well, I mean, while the Iron Universe could be interpreted as a happy ending, it's more bittersweet. If you want to go full blown happy mode, you have Joseph on the crew now. That means it's a guaranteed happy ending, because you can never kill Joseph unless he takes Emporio's spot or he just plays a similar role to Emporio. I don't really think that's the case, and it's possible for Pucci to still be defeated. Kakuin and Hierophant kind of counter the Made in Heaven, like the whole Made in Heaven about to happen thing. Okuyasu and the Hand erase. Okay, like Okuyasu, it all depends. Okay, so if Okuyasu's still an idiot, he's probably gonna die extremely fast. Like when I mean fast, I mean like Punishment Ward arc. He's either dying to Kenzo or Pucci during the Punishment Ward. Probably like how Hermes died in the Whole Horse What If, which would probably still happen, so Hermes is still gonna die earlier on. FF's gonna die. Nokuyasu probably is going to die there if he's not an idiot. If he's still an idiot, like if he's an idiot, if he's smart, chances are he can make it through, but he'd probably die against Pucci in Made in Heaven. Similar to how Pucci decided to kill Anasui and Jotaro because there stands through like the bigger threat against Made in Heaven's like slicing abilities. Okuyasu's the hand can maybe get close enough, like when Pucci would go for like a vital split place to slice. Okuyasu could put the back of the hand over, like the backhand of the hand. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Put that like over their throat or something. So if he were to slit it, it would just cut his fingers off, which could actually work if Okuyasu is smart. If he's an idiot, he's gonna be dead quick. Josuke would probably survive unless we get the Iruniverse ending. I don't know. It depends on what the ending could be. Like maybe if Joseph goes with Jotaro during Pucci's and John Gallier. I think I pronounced his name right. Like if he's there then it's easier. Having 3 members there, Joseph could probably protect Jolene, and then that would leave Jotaro enough time to kill Pucci, which is another possibility that could actually happen out of it. But most likely there would be some big changes in part 6. I assume there's a most likely chance that part 6 isn't going to end with a wonderful world, but instead it's going to end with part 6 is kind of a more happy ending. I mean, it'll just then continue the OG timeline. And at that point, we'd probably just get more parts. Part 7 with Shizuka could be a fun idea. Part 7 with Jarno's child would be an interesting idea too. I don't know, these are some ideas that can come out of it. But that would probably be like some of the main changes. Most It'd mostly be similar to the What If Whole Horse joined the Crusaders, but just remove Whole Horse and Polnar from part 6. Put Joseph and Okuyasu, and there's Tenma and Josuke are still there, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of what would change. Thoughts on the video? Thank you to Bully for the video. Please don't bully me if I sound like an idiot and ruin the video for you. I try my best to make it good because this was a suggestion, and I want to make all my suggestions good because next week I'm going to do another suggestion because I'm a nice guy and I want to kind of get all the what if suggestions out of the way because I want to try to get a few of them out of the way because I've been getting some lately and I need to kind of get them already out. And that's a good thing because that's going to help me because I'll think of some video ideas and then I'll probably either like put them on the back burner, but then like some of the ideas I will put some what ifs on the back burner. That's why it takes so long for a few months because I have so many other videos I want to get done first. So yeah, that's kind of why suggest. That's why whenever you get a what if suggestion, you're not don't assume it's gonna come in like 3 to 4 weeks, because it's not going to. It's gonna take like 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 at the most. Some of them will take super long. Jotaruchia. But yeah, I had to say thank you for the video, suggestion bully. Next week's another suggestion. I hope you enjoy. And you'll probably know if it's you. So take your guess if you're the lucky pick. Bye.